TumbleTrack is having a sale. 5% off carpet bonded foam and 10% off of home use products. All the things you need to do gymnastics in your living room is the best, which is the best thing ever. And you need that. All adult gymnasts need that. Visit TumbleTrack at TUMBLTRAK, tumbletrack.com. Train smart. This show is rated PG-13, so you might hear a naughty word or two. Today, Karolyis consequences, no more national letter of intent, and this episode is brought to you by you. We are answering all of your questions. It's a feedback extravaganza. It's October 14th, 2024. Welcome to the #1 gymnastics podcast in the galaxy. I'm Jessica, and I'm here with Spencer from the Balance Beam Situation. And today, let us begin with the headlines, which is very exciting because a lot of things happened during the Olympics that we did not have time to talk about because it was the Olympics, by the way.
Which is kind of a big deal, I guess.
Kind of a big deal. No time for NCAA nonsense. But basically, a revolution happened. Everyone's getting paid. It's everything. A cartel was brought down. Finally, all the things that we've talked about for years and years about the NCAA being a $3 billion organization. Now they're going to have to distribute that. Kind of.
We'll see.
Yeah,
I think you have a lot of ideals.
I have a lot of ideals.
And it's the NCAA. It's still the NCAA.
They're passing it down the line, but still. So the NCAA has removed the national letter of intent. It doesn't mean there's not something in its place. There's still going to be a contract between the school and an athlete that says, I've signed this now. Now no one else is allowed to try to recruit me. But now instead of a national letter of intent, it's going to be called it's a financial aid agreement, athletic aid.
They've always had to sign in addition to the national letter of intent. There's always been you sign the letter that's like, I'm yours forever. And then you also sign I am on scholarship. Pay for the school money. So my theory about this.
Yes, tell me.
I think they got rid of the NLI specifically because it was too confusing with the NIL. With name, image, and likeness and national letter of intent. They were like, this is too confusing. We have to get rid of it. And I think that was the intent behind the whole thing.
Yes, I think that makes sense. I think
Jessica definitely does.
I was
I'm inverting letters. You're like, this is perfect.
Yes.
Get rid of this.
I was like, please. I am not saying the acronym no matter what because I will say it wrong.
Get wrong.
Yeah. So the idea is that they've finally gotten rid of this because as of next year, the NCAA organizations will be able to directly pay the athletes. And so the idea is that they think the national letter of intent is going away because there's an impending revenue sharing model across all college athletics that's coming down the pipe. And so let's talk about that because remember my favorite part of the money game?
When Jay Clark said the quiet part out loud and was like, oh, revenue sharing is coming. And they were like, maybe don't. And he was like, it is.
But revenue sharing is coming. It's in the courts. So the deal's done. It's happening. So the impending revenue sharing model was a response to 3 antitrust lawsuits. So if you're not familiar with antitrust, basically it means a monopoly. You can't have a monopoly in the United States. We have laws against that. And finally, enough people sued and made enough noise about this for the cartel of the NCAA to be taken down. So these lawsuits were settled back in May. There's a settlement agreement, so it's still working. All the details are being worked out, but it means that the NCAA has agreed to pay over $2.8 billion in damages to former athletes. So if you competed all the way back to 2016, you're eligible for this, by the way. So you should have been contacted about this as the part of the settlement. But this eliminates restrictions on schools directly paying their players, their athletes. So part of this grand settlement agreement is like, by the way, money. And then the other parts of a settlement, because the settlement's not always money, is the agreement to be like, and also you can now revenue share and directly pay. So that is what the national letter of intent is, the speculation it's going to turn into this. And your revenue sharing portion is XYZ. There's also a limit to the revenue sharing.
Changing the document to be more money. It wasn't money before.
No, before it said, you are signing this and your agreement was signing over your name, image, and likeness in perpetuity to the NCAA. Now, the school and the NCAA are licensing your name, image, and likeness for the duration of your, athleticness at the school or whatever they agree on. But it's not going to be like one school can, pay athletes $1 billion and another school can only pay them, whatever, 20 million. There's a limit on how much schools are able to pay. So just so you know, but this is a big deal. All the right things are happening. Yes, it's kind of terrifying because, it's terrifying for schools that are like, this is going to take us out of business. We're going to close down shop. But also, revenue sharing needs to be part of how things work. So it is the right thing to happen in the long run.
Is it scary for gymnasts to feel like, well, all of this money is going to just go to football?
Okay, I need to know more about how the agreement works. Because that is the problem right now, because there are no rules about it. But I would assume that, I would assume there's something about that in there, but it's a little bit worrisome, of course. I mean, obviously, every football program is always going to get more money because they are able to have, 100 players on a team for football or whatever it is. Don't write me letters. I know. I just don't care. I'm being facetious. And that's why they're always going to have more money because there's so many more people than any other team. But I would assume there is some kind of reasonable expenditure per head. But like the main thing, like to your point, that's happening right now is that collectives, which is basically, collectives and alumni are just finding a way to pay directly, and the collectives will be like, oh, we like this team the most, so we're going to give, even though gymnastics and men's and women's gymnastics at Oklahoma has won all these times or whatever, we're going to give all of our money to baseball or some nonsense like that. Baseball, I mean, maybe baseball won, I don't know, but if you can eat while you're playing the game, it's not a real sport. Okay. If you are enjoying this content and you're enjoying all the news that you find here at GymCastic, and you are watching us on YouTube, do you know what we found out about YouTube?
Tell me.
70% of our YouTube viewers aren't subscribed. You guys, 70%. You must subscribe. This is how the podcast people get us. Make sure that you subscribe on the tubes of you so that you don't miss anything. There's always things happening in gymnastics. There's actually no downtime. Despite what people might tell you, never downtime in gymnastics. Like the other thing we found out is freaking Simone apparently got Botox on her TikTok, she said, for her 27th birthday. And it was a terrible experience and she's never done it again. And I'm like, thank God, Simone, never do the Botox. No judgment. If you want to do the Botox.
Me so glad I don't social media in this moment. I'm just like, I'm so glad this information has never crossed my path or my mind. And so I don't think about it. And it's great.
I'm like, it's no judgment. If you've decided to do this and it's for you, that's great. You do you. But I am the person who's like, if there's something that could go wrong.
You're a person who has an opinion about things? I'm shocked. I'm shocked to hear that you have an opinion about other people's behavior.
Like, there's something can go wrong with a neurotoxin and injecting it into you, then it would happen to me. So since you did have a good experience, this is also what I feel like is one of those things that I would not, that would go badly for me too, just like Simone. Okay, Gymternet is also, did you see on the tour, speaking of Simone, they, that Ian Gunther is doing his behind the scenes on the tour and the GOAT tour, which I love. Because someone pointed this out, they're just playing gymnastics, which is what's fun about gymnastics. And that's the great part about adult gymnastics. You just get to play gymnastics the whole time. No one can tell you what to do. If you don't want to do full routines, don't do them. If you never want to do bars again, you don't have to. It's excellent, you guys. Anyway, the point of this is Ian Gunther can do a full twisting dive roll. And he was like, let's try this. Oh my God, you guys. If you ever want to see why gymnastics is dangerous and people should not do it on their own without a coach, just watch that video. Like it's one of the most dangerous skills in gymnastics. You would think it's a triple twisting double, but it's not actually. A full twisting dive roll is super dangerous. And watching this, you will see why even the greatest gymnast ever to live cannot do it without almost dying. So please, no one ever do a full twisting dive roll again. It can die a slow death or a quick death, just like the Corbett on bars.
What if you can do it and it's nice to look at? Because I do like looking at it.
It is a beautiful skill, but it is not a skill to learn playing around. It is a skill to learn with a spotting belt and a spotter and a pit, because it's so dangerous. So it gave me hives watching it. It's terrifying. Yeah. Except Joss and Casimir are very smart, and they just flipped all the way over onto their backs and missed the roll part totally. And I was like, yes,
safe.
That is correct. Yeah. It is a beautiful skill. Okay, we have some Gymternet news to get to before we have our mini commission about what the hell with the Karolyis, and then lots of questions. So USAG announced their coaches of the year. Cecile Landi, coach of Simone and Jordan and Joss and everybody, coach of the year. Congratulations. And new co-head coach at Georgia. And then Thom Glielmi at Stanford is the coach of the year for the men.
Okay, I have a question. Yes. I have a question about this, because remember, obviously, like Cecile winning women's coach of the year, like, yes, obviously, sure.
Obviously.
It used to be Laurent for like a consecutive number of years, and now it's been Cecile the last couple of years. So my question is, what, like, did they say, like, actually Cecile's the head coach of this and she should be getting the award, or was there a change with like the voting procedures, or who was eligible, or who they decided to submit for a nomination? Like, I want to know what changed so that it stopped being like Laurent's award and started being Cecile's award, because as far as I know, their roles haven't changed at WCC, and they're coaching, and they both have their purviews and they do different things.
Yeah, that's a very good point.
I'm just interested in like how the process works, and if they submit a name, or if it's just like our mantle was a little lopsided and the Laurent side was getting too heavy, and we needed to like have all of Cecile's awards in like a pyramid on the other side to balance it out. This is also possible.
I like that. I like a pyramid. Also, maybe Cecile was like, I don't really care, but Laurent likes to look in the mirror at his awards. So she was always like, you go ahead.
You go ahead, fine.
Another important thing happened this past week, which we talked about on Behind the Scenes on Friday, is that Beyonce finally got to meet Suni Lee, Olympic champion.
Oh, good. It's such an honor for Beyonce.
It's an honor for Beyonce. Beyonce's very lucky to meet Suni. Congratulations to Beyonce for finally meeting Suni Lee. They met at the Glamour Awards. Florida has been cleaning up with the recruits. You guys want to see your
like LSU? Shut up.
Your documentary.
We don't want to hear from you anymore.
We've signed everyone. Simone Rose is committed to Florida. Kieryn Finnell to Florida. Dulcy Caylor committed to Florida. Lacey Saltzman is going to Minnesota. Jasmine Jimenez is going to Utah. Do you think? See, I think it is not weird. I saw some people talking about this. Like, is it weird if you're Cecile and you're not the head coach, co-head coach? Excuse me, Ryan. All due respect. At Georgia, but your own gymnast isn't going to go to Georgia to be coached by you in college. I feel like that's not weird.
No, I don't think that's weird. I actually think in a lot of ways it's healthy.
Yes.
To have a different environment, different perspective, different coaches. Like, that's a good and mature thing, depending on the person. Obviously, it depends on your comfort level. But yeah, I think it's a good thing. Also,
hopefully you are taking education into account and like majors and what you want to do. And so maybe,
if you know, which most don't, and that's fine.
I know. It's so rare.
You don't have to go to college, don't know. It's fine.
Florida, highly rated in the food science, where you learn how to like make the concoctions of food and all the things that will kill you. And, if the food is not made properly. We just were at an Oktoberfest thing and they had, potato salad. And I was like, oh my God, I wish I had like a little temperature. I wish it had a timer on it. How long has this been out? This is why I'm thinking of things that could kill you with food.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. Don't eat loose potato salad. It's unproven, untested.
I don't know what we ate at that, but it was like pretzels, which got smaller this year, by the way. No. And then they try to
They
give you
weren't like
cheese.
the pretzels they had out in Stuttgart every day for us in the media area.
Those pretzels were so good. Oh my God.
But I got so sick of them.
I was not. I could eat those.
Germany was like, this is what hi Americans, this is what pretzels are.
You're welcome. Yeah, they tried to give us cheese with the pretzels. I'm like, that's disgusting. No one does that. I guess it's a thing. But you guys, it's a spicy mustard all the way for me. Speaking of spicy mustard, Vanessa Ferrari has announced her retirement.
We did talk about this on Behind the Scenes. We did a little moment of our top Vanessa Ferrari memories.
Yes.
But icon of longevity, as well as winning a world all-around title and an Olympic floor medal.
And you talked about evolving her gymnastics and how she fit into a team to be able to keep making the teams and be able to contribute in the ways that she could contribute as she got older. She's 33, first Italian woman to win an individual medal in gymnastics for Italy, which is just insane. Yeah, and then I wish there had been an audience to witness in Tokyo her floor routine in the final, because it was one of the greatest gymnastics moments I've ever seen in person. It was stunning. The absolute winner in my heart of that floor final. It was so beautiful. If you guys aren't aware, this show is brought to you by Club Gym Nerd. Club Gym Nerd people get an extra podcast every single week. You can listen to it on your favorite podcast player, or you can join us live and ask questions live and make snarky comments like some people like to do.
React live.
React live. My snarky comments, I mean, there are some people that are very famous in the gymnastics community who show up every week and like to tease us in the comments. And
by us, we mean you.
It is mostly me. Spencer just gets all the love and praise, but it's very fun. We love Fridays doing our Q&As behind the scenes, and then during NCAA
like when
season,
Jessica tries to come up with the capital of Florida, which was a highlight of last week's behind the scenes. It was a really good one, you guys.
Anyway, I got some letter. I knew the location of it. That's important.
Yeah.
I used to be able to say all of the capitals and states in order, from Alaska, Juneau, Washington, Bay, Oregon, Salem, all the way. Yeah.
When did you have to learn? Did you have to learn that for school?
Yeah. 3rd through 8th grade, we recited all the presidents in order and all the states and capitals in order every morning before school started.
Ew. Even I think that's dumb.
That's the school where we had to stand up and speak in French when an adult entered the room.
Whoa.
Oh, we can talk all about that school. Yeah, it was supposed to be a Christian, quote unquote, school. It was the meanest place I've ever been in my life. Jesus would have wept on the grounds. They did him dirty. So anyway, if you wanted me to hear about more stuff like
if you want things like that, that's I think a really good example of what behind the scenes is like. Yes. If you liked that interchange, you should definitely subscribe, because we do that for like an hour every Friday.
And then we answer a question, like whatever the breaking news in gymnastics is, we talk about that. And we, like people ask us questions and we read letters and talk about all of the things. So, which is one of the things we're going to get to, because one of the end of the year things that we get to, it's not the end of the year yet. It's the best time of the year. It's Halloween. But it's like, we want to make sure we answer all of your questions. And we have at some point, we've had 70 pages of questions. So we want to make sure we answer everything. So today we are going to get to these questions so everyone can benefit from them, and we can discuss them. So if you want to check out Club Gym Nerd and join and support the show, and you get discounts on live show tickets, you get first dibs on live show tickets. You can make your own rage or enthusiasm meter or mini commission. Check it out at gymcastic.com at the Join the Club tab. And also, if you have any questions about it, customer service at gymcastic.com. Customer service. That's at gymcastic.com. That's the one to email to get help. So, we have a store update. We have new vintage wash t-shirts in the store starting today. And there's a store also, gymcastic.com. Black, acid black, royal blue, that's my favorite, light gray, light olive, Tennessee orange.
I'm surprised acid black was not your favorite.
I know. Well, I don't like a faded black. I like a black.
A black.
Yeah, I like a jet
That's
black.
one of the options too.
Yeah, which I do like. Let's begin our feedback extravaganza with a mini commission from world champion level Club Gym Nerd member Jeannie, who asked us this.
I have always wondered, after listening and reading the Nadia Files and seeing the Karolyis and what happened during the criminal ex-doctor situation, why do you think that neither of the Karolyis were legally accused of anything? Why do you think they are living free and had no consequences for anything that happened? Why do you think Nadia and Mary Lou always hug them and act like they're besties? Anyway, this question I never understood, and you know more information than I do. I was a gymnast in the 90s and 80s. Thank you. You should say, I was a gymnast in the 1980s. You're welcome. Because that's,
Yes.
the
golden
proper era. If you would like a mini commission as well, you can join Club Gym Nerd at the world champion level at gymcastic.com. Jessica, would you like to start?
Yes. So your first question, so with the Nadia Files, there's more coming to that. And if you guys aren't familiar with this, worked with a journalist in Romania to go and get approval from the Romanian government to go and look at the secret police files on the Karolyis. And there's also a book out about this. And we have some episodes that I will link in the show notes about that. But there's more to come. So what do you think either of the Karolyis, why do we think they weren't legally accused of anything? They were legally accused. They were very much legally accused. So from the beginning of time, the beginning of their work in Romania, they were accused of physical abuse against gymnasts, child abuse. But because it wasn't in the ruling party's favor, they were never held to account. And the letters from the kids were literally stopped before they could go any further by the local ruling party, who was in favor of what the Karolyis were doing, and they were in cahoots with them. So that is one reason why. The second reason is that even though they were accused, I think there was never proof to hold them directly into account about what happened with the ex-doctor. That is one of the reasons. Even though if you ask anyone in gymnastics or USA Gymnastics from the time, they will tell you there is nothing that Marta Karolyi did not know. She knew everything was happening with everyone all the time, no matter what. But was there a paper trail that could prove was there enough people? I think that was part of the legal, why they weren't, didn't go to jail and, didn't go to prison, weren't convicted of something specifically. Were they in all the lawsuits? Yes. But were they, very few people went to prison over this specifically. Were they part of the settlements? Yes.
In terms of the question about why Nadia and Mary Lou always hug them and act like they're besties, I think it's really complicated, which goes down to different people are different and have different experiences, different desires. I think that Nadia is a really good politician and would be great at politics and is always known, especially during the Steve Penny era and before, it's like you needed to, if you were going to be part of anything, you were going to be pro Karolyi. If you had spoken out against the Karolyis, it was like, okay, you're not getting invited to anything. So I think that's part of it, especially for Mary Lou, because she's American, and Nadia's I'm an international star of the world. But yeah, I think there's also, for every coach that has, safe sport complaints against them, everything, there are plenty of gymnasts who love that coach and had a great experience. And some of that is just different people responding differently to the same language and just having a completely different interpretation. Some of it is, yeah, I knew exactly what I was getting into. They're super mean and I wanted to go to the Olympics. And so I accept exactly what happened. And I think maybe that's more the Mary Lou answer, which is probably yeah, they were mean, but I was okay with it. And I wanted to go to the Olympics and I got through it and I did what I wanted to do and I accomplished my goals and I'm happy with it. And so there's not that ill will necessarily.
Yep.
And you have, the favorite, if you're the star, you have often have a really different experience of a coach than someone who isn't the star.
Yep. And And I think Nadia and Mary Lou are very good examples because Nadia, like, she literally came back from her Olympics. This is what the Project K files are all about, the secret police files that we have up on gymcastic.com. They're literally about, the investigation started by the secret police when she came back from the Olympics in Montreal and said, I will not be coached by them. Find me a new situation. I refuse to be near them, be coached by them, anything. But then later she did go back to them. And it's also, yeah, she's smart and she knows what she's doing and she knows how to put herself in the best situations to personally thrive.
And the passage of time is also part of it. You know, Nadia and Mary Lou were coached by them a long time ago.
Yep. It's also, I think there is something about people being willing to come out and speak out against healthy young coaches as opposed to people that are like on their deathbeds. Not Marta, but Bella is very declining health. And I feel there is part of people that are just like, oh, am I going to kick them when they're down? Mm-hmm. I mean, I think that's, I'm not saying this is right or wrong. I'm just saying that is a part of how people think about this. And I think it's also complicated. Like Spencer said, like there are, in terms of what they did, absolutely criminal behavior, period. End of story. Especially exactly the things that went on, not related to the ex-doctor, but the things that happened in Romania, absolutely crimes, no gray area, period. Yes, they should have been punished for that. And should never have been allowed to coach in the United States. Those are actual crimes. In terms of what the things that happened in the United States and the things that got away with in the United States and people's experience, I think it's complicated when you're someone who's like, my life is better in so many ways. And I love this. And I had so many positive experiences. Like my life is enhanced in so many ways because of this versus there were things they did that were not acceptable. And I feel like if I had told them, they would have stopped. They would have listened to me. Like we had, Carrie Strug's parents went and talked to the Karolyis and said, like, you won't do these things. And from all reports, they stopped. Like they had to be told no. And then they didn't because they wanted to coach her and she's really good. So I think there is this like weighing, kind of like we're talking about with the GOAT tour, like gymnastics, you've been good to me. Like it's not gymnastics. It's not this like net good that gymnastics have done for me. It is, there were parts of this that were really bad. Was it worth it? And then you'll talk to other people who are like, no, it's horrible. And none of it was worth it. And all of it should have been stopped. And there is the net good was completely negated by the negative. So I just like people.
And it doesn't really necessarily correspond to your accomplishments. I think abusive coaches will often say like, well, they're bitter. They didn't get what they wanted out of gymnastics and now they're bitter and they're coming after me. And it's like, it's not necessarily related to how well you did. Like we talked about Dominique Dawes, amazing career, Olympic gold medalist, is like kind of, there were problems. And I'm going to talk about that. And it's not because she didn't have a great gymnastics career, because she kind of had an amazing one. So it's not necessarily correlated to your accomplishments.
Yep.
It's kind of how you see the value of all of that in retrospect.
Yep. So it's complicated. That's why.
Yeah.
But there are some.
Is that a comprehensive answer? It's really, really complicated.
Yeah. But the black and white of it is, yes, they should have gone to jail, in prison, in Romania, but there was not it's a corrupt political system. Yeah. So thank you, Jeannie, so much for that question. All right. Feedback extravaganza.
Here we go.
So you can post questions on the forum at gymcastic.com. You can email us at gymcastic@gmail.com. If you're a club member, you get a whole extra podcast where we answer these. And there's a special section in the forums too. But let's start with something that's so amazing, Spencer. Let's start with the NPR shout out from Nicole.
All right, Nicole says, I wanted to give you all a huge thank you. For decades, I viewed myself as strictly a print newspaper journalist. But your podcast, and admittedly the pandemic, pushed me outside my comfort zone. I have been driving past my local NPR station for years and wanted to apply for a job there, but was filled with self-doubt. I listened to GymCastic obsessively during the pandemic, including the oldest episodes that I had never heard. Ooh, brave. I realized that if Jessica could start a wildly successful watchdog gymnastics podcast without a journalism degree or basic audio knowledge, I could at least send in my cover letter and a resume. What did I have to lose? The amazing news, I started my dream job at NPR last week. There's a shout out to GymCastic in my staff biography. Another aside, this summer I got a colonoscopy because of Spencer sharing his story. It turns out I just have hemorrhoids that never went away after pregnancy, but hearing Spencer's story made me stop ignoring my own symptoms. Or you might have no symptoms like me. It's great. And GymCastic staff, you are changing the world for the better, from careers to colonoscopies. Thanks for all that you do. With gratitude, from Iowa.
Thank you so much for this. And thank you so much for the opportunity to make Spencer read praise about himself out loud, Nicole.
Horrible.
You're the best. And I also looked at her NPR bio, and she's a total badass. So I'm so glad that we could inspire you, because you're amazing. And we have some letters about journalism stuff. So I'm gonna talk about like some mistakes I made in the beginning, and like learning from that. But let's start with the fantasy gymnastics, because we have been asking people to give their feedback on fantasy so we can improve it. So we're working with the developers, and we have a letter. And you guys, some of these letters I have abbreviated. I read everything that you wrote, so it's all in here. But we have to, for brevity, because we have too many letters, and we really wanted to like actually clear the cache of letters. So everything has been read. But let's start with Olympics and bronze controversy letters. Let's start with the background on the Simone Skinner beef. We did a little segment on that during the Olympics.
Dan says, thank you for the daily entertaining and informative Olympic gym coverage. I do see, you can see we're going into the archives here. This is our deep dive. I listen to all your podcasts, even the ones that promote the men's competition. With that, I heard from all the men's all around where you went back to share the beef between Simone and MyKayla that went back years from camp, and how they can no longer be roommates. I was curious if you can clarify this a little more. If I recall correctly, the last time Biles and Skinner competed together was the 2021 Tokyo Olympics. In MyKayla's vlog, it looks like Simone and MyKayla roomed together at these games. Also, I assume they must have been on good, in quote, terms if MyKayla was able to join the GOAT tour. Am I missing something? Or perhaps there was always underlying drama, but these last comments from Skinner allowed Simone to have an excuse to speak up. I assume with the history with MyKayla disrespecting Gabby also hit Simone indirectly, being a person of color. Let me know your thoughts. Thanks again for all you do. I look forward to hearing the remainder of the Olympic coverage and joining your future live shows. I hope you enjoyed the remainder of the Olympics.
Yeah. So a couple things. The first is, roommates. So the roommate thing, there was an incident that happened, and they were, Simone was not subjected to Skinnerness for a period of time. And then Skinner went to college, and things seemed to improve. And then part of the tour casting and the selling points of the tour was having all the Olympians on the tour. And they seemed to get along better. And, MyKayla seemed to grow as a person and learn things in college. Was the point of going to college. But you didn't learn all the things, all the important things. So yeah, there was a reprieve for a while. And then there wasn't. Things change, relationships ebb and flow. That's basically what happened. Did that answer all the questions, I think?
I think so.
Yeah. I think there's part of them getting along as like, Skinner grew some in college, and then they got along as like the oldest ones on the, at the Olympics. And then
could be like, we're adults and these other people aren't.
Yeah.
As like adults.
Yeah. Okay. Speaking of adults, Chinese team too old.
Ooh. Siggy says, hey, I was just wondering if you have seen the comments from Xiaoshuang about the Chinese team being too old and about the way the Chinese women are trained. I'm curious about what you think of what was said and the timeline it was released, which was before the men's all around. And there's a link to the article. Response. Li Xiaoshuang floor at 18 in Barcelona and gold all
wait.
around.
So wait, hold on 1 second. This is my notes for a response. So that's what I wrote there, which is unusual. Well, that's why Spencer. But this is how I can trick you. Now I know I can just write response and then write things like Li Xiaoshuang's pants fell down. Like you tried to do.
I should have known because Li Xiaoshuang is spelled so incorrectly that this was purely from Jessica.
So just for a reminder of who this is. So Li Xiaoshuang is the gymnast from China who won floor in Barcelona, I think. And then he won all around at age 22 in Atlanta. And so he is the one that's quoted in this Reuters article. And basically, he did a live in China. And these are quotes from that live that he did in China. So he said about the men, quote, our team of coaches have issues. Let's not put all responsibilities on the athletes. This reminded me very much of the French coaches in France and the women's team in Paris. A further quote, if they failed, the coaches did something wrong. We need to tell the truth after we fail, said the 50-year-old Li in an online live broadcast that went viral on Chinese social media. Quote, our athletes are too old. Sports needs young people. We really need to change the way we train and select athletes. But this is interesting. He then goes on to say from the article, Li also criticized the way China's women's gymnasts were trained, saying they were burned out too young. Yes, we should change our training methods. Don't always say our bodies are not as strong as the Americans. Give the girls a bit of time to grow. We burn them out too soon. Put this dude in charge, honestly. He's amazing, except the too old part. Yeah, that was odd. But I think what I'm taking from what he's saying here is not that the athletes are too old, but they don't have depth. Like they're counting on people who
have been counted on a lot
for too much, and like it's not
the new generation isn't coming along to replace them. Although I would argue Jung Hong is the new generation and is coming along to replace them because he's excellent.
Yeah. And I mean, it's not necessarily, I think that these athletes are too old. It's like maybe, I mean, we talk about the role as you get older is maybe, you know, not everyone can be an Ellie Black and a Simone and do all around for 5 Olympic games or whatever Ellie has done. How many Olympics has Ellie been in now? Is it only 4? It feels like more.
It's 9.
Ellie's been in all the Olympics. But like not everybody can do that. And sometimes your role needs to grow. And like they do have specialists on the Chinese team. But that's kind of how I read it, like depth to fill in where you need people.
And I think the comment about selecting athletes is also particularly important because it's been so controversial with the way the Chinese team selects athletes. Yep. And I think maybe this is especially on the men's team. And I think maybe this is a point toward, hey, you needed to not depend on the veterans that you've always depended on because there are people who are younger and better who might be replacing them. And you're showing maybe favoritism to the people you've selected before. About the women's team, I'm like, yes.
100%. Everything you said. And this isn't even a like super young team, but yeah.
Yeah, they need to find a way to keep people around longer and not want it. We talked about this during the Olympics, I think, with Guan Chen winning beam in Tokyo and being like, okay, I'm done now. It's like you want, like, it's your responsibility as a program to make it enticing enough that Guan Chen wants to continue to do gymnastics because she's amazing.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. That's the thing.
And it used to be like when you talk about the US program, it used to be like they constructed it as it's such an honor for you to be chosen by us, the important people, to come here. And they've had to transition to how do we sell ourselves as elite gymnastics so that these athletes who could go to college and get their NIL and just do that want to be part of this. Like we have to sell ourselves to the athletes rather than the athletes proving themselves to us has been such a huge change. And I think it's a change that the Chinese program needs to undergo.
Like we think about Chung Fei in talking about people like Ellie Black and Simone and Vanessa Ferrari, like who got stronger as they got older and as their career went on and kept being very successful. And that's one of the lessons I think that has fallen away since Chung Fei's days that we haven't seen that kind of longevity with
Chongfei comeback. Jessica's calling for it.
Yeah, but that's there's so many things during the Olympics that happened that we didn't get to everything because it's like a news fire hose. Yeah, a news fire hose. Okay, bronze controversy follow-up. So this is a letter. Laura had a lot to say about this, but I had to condense this a little bit. But here we go.
Okay, Laura says, you need to know my background to appreciate where I'm coming from. I fell in love with gymnastics because of Nadia in the 1976 Olympics. I saw something on TV that looked so exciting, and the winner looked like me. I quickly learned a back handspring, had my dad make a balance beam, and I was on my way. I was very, very serious about it. I was not an elite, but I lived and breathed gymnastics class 1. The back and forth. A conclusion comes out of the rumble.
So then basically she goes in to talk about all the things about the cast decision and what happened with Nadia coming out publicly and talking about the out of bounds and all of that stuff. So this is where we're picking up the back and forth.
Okay, the back and forth. And a conclusion comes out of the rumble. A way was found to put a Romanian on the podium. The 4 seconds. Oh, and it doesn't matter which one of them gets it, which probably led to infighting amongst the Romanian delegation. Produce the proof of the 4 seconds from whichever clock or TV broadcast leaned in that direction, and ta-da. This was an opportunity that fell into their lap. I understand. But it looks like they found or created an unexpected way to get that bronze. Like the mission was find a way rather than try to work through the judging errors. But once again, isn't a strike in baseball when the umpire calls it? Can't hockey goals be reviewed in the middle of the game by a separate refs with many TV angles? Finding an error long after the competition looks after the competition is over. Okay, finding an error long after the competition is over looks like something other than fair judging. What do you think of my long story? Spencer, I hope you're hanging in there. My husband is a straight for Spencer. I wish I could have said this directly to you. Very good husband choice. Okay. Jessica?
Also, Laura, I'm so jealous because the class 1 floor routine, the compulsory routine was so beautiful, and I wish I could have learned it. Class 1 compulsories, back in the day when there's actual like violins and cellos playing the music, and not like today where it just makes you want to like smash an organ into your brain. Anywho, oh, I hate the compulsory music so much. So here, did they just find a way? And yes, like this is the thing, the whole superior jury. So this going back to the bronze floor controversy.
Mm-hmm.
The superior jury is established to step in to make sure the judging is fair if something is out of bounds with the judging. So they create the rules on purpose so that they can step in and correct things, which they did in this case. Whether you think Jordan should have gotten credit or not, that is what happened. That Jordan got credit for her leap. The other thing is that another way to look at this is, according to my sources who contacted me during that floor final, so they had direct knowledge from both the Romanian side and the US side. The motivation to file the cast filing for Anna Barbosu, it was not like a one-time thing that was, this is somebody's first Olympics or first World Championships and they've never been in this position before. This was a response from many, many, many years of seeing errors made in the judging that directly affected gymnasts. There have been so many times, when we talk about, like, we predict the future on the show, it's because we have covered so many times and examples where here's a rule that's going to be used right or wrong and affect the outcome of a competition. We have a whole episode on that, which I'll also link. The judging is so much better. The system of FIG gymnastics is still a mess, and without receipts, without accountability, without them having to answer to the gymnasts and the public. Basically, they only answer to themselves. So I would say, like, did Romania find a way to get a Romanian on the podium? Yes. But also they found a way to expose a system that had affected many gymnasts in many programs in many different countries over many years. You have to remember that the head coaches of the Romanian program came from the Netherlands and the US. So this is not like a first go around with something that has happened like this. There are many examples of it over the years. I'll link to the episode where we talk about all the examples. And like, I think this is why what happened to the gymnasts is horrible. What's happening in the FIG is good because it is exposing their lack of accountability and transparency. And that's very important. So, yeah. And yes, it's unfair to change the ruling after a competition ends 10 days later. But also, someone needed to do this eventually and challenge the system in order to change it. And change is painful. Unfortunately, it's being extra painful for the wrong people, to the athletes and not to the system. I mean, not that it's not been painful for people in the FIG, but painful in the right way. Yeah. Okay. Jordan. Skill credit, but E deduction. So this is talking about Jordan Childs' Olympic final floor routine. She did not originally get credit for a leap. She was given credit later by the superior jury after an inquiry by Cecile, the inquiry that was allegedly late, but it wasn't, that led to the cast decision. So, Switch Side-Eye says, Switch Side-Eye, best name ever.
I just wanted to comment on Jordan's split leap 1.5-ish in the floor final. I don't have an issue with them valuing it. It's right on that within 90 degrees for credit line. But a lot of times this doesn't result in much benefit to the gymnast, because if you give the higher credit to the element, you would also need to take execution for under rotation of the higher value element, which would be a max of 0.2 here in dev. So in dev, we would devalue to Trish half, take precision, or we could give it and take the 0.2 under rotation, depends on the situation / level / judge. Jordan's E score remained the same, which means we realize that in FIG land, this much works differently. It does. So do you know how this situation is handled in the FIG code, and especially in FIG inquiries? So this is a very interesting question, and it's one of the differences between most meets in the world where the judges are doing the difficulty and the execution both themselves and know what they're giving credit for and what they're not. So at the Olympics, you have a D panel and an E panel, and they are not talking to each other. The E panel does not know what the D panel is going to decide. They should know, because they should be on the same page and all have the same training. But as we've learned, that doesn't always necessarily happen. So, and we have another question later that's also going to get into this same topic. So basically, you can't inquire. So Jordan's E score remained the same because you can't inquire E score. That's just done, and it is what it is. The E score judges are deducting what they see without knowing what the D score judges have given credit to in an elite competition. So they're going to take the deductions for the attempted split leap 1.5. Because that's obviously what Jordan was going for. She wasn't going for a split leap full. She was trying to get the 1.5 around. So they're going to take the deductions for the 1.5.
Yeah.
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 Complete answer?
Yes, that was a complete and good answer.
Okay. But I agree. I understand also what Switch Side I said about not having an issue with them upgrading Jordan, or giving Jordan the split leap 1.5, because it's right on that within 90 degrees for credit line. I agree with that, being it's right in between that 90 degrees for credit line. That's not how leaps have been evaluated this quad by the FIG. It's like, if you're not, like, 90 degrees is not cutting it. If you're not right there fully around, you're not getting credit. And that's one of the issues that we have, is the inconsistency of the decision rather than the objective images of being, right within 90 degrees. It's not how things have been judged.
Yeah. And also, I should clarify, when I say the judging is better, I mean, the judging is better from when they decided at a cocktail party who to award things to now.
Yeah, I think there are a lot of ways to say
There's
the
a
judging
lot
is
of
better. It's
things.
not perfect. There are a lot of problems, but
Yes.
would I rather have the way we're judging now, even though I prefer a Tenno system, versus the 80s? I'd rather have the way we're judging now.
Yes. Like, it's so much better now. Okay, still nothing official. How is a 10K Leo modest and coach's selection? Oh, yes.
Okay, absolutely not. Says, I have a few questions. How is it possible that we are, at this point, 16 days out from the floor final, and we still haven't heard from the official? They can't not know about all the controversy. How have they not come forward, or at least been identified, or sold the story to USA Today for $1 million? Are they under the rock, or has the FIGM taken care of them? We have them on video, yes. How are they not on a most wanted poster or something?
Okay, let's answer this first. This is amazing.
Yeah.
So the official refers to so at the Olympics there are basically officials who are assigned to take the inquiries among other duties. But this person then acknowledges a verbal inquiry and then enters into the system, the Omega system, the time that an inquiry was taken, and then it goes up it shoots up like a flagpole right at Donatella Sacchi's desk. This is the person we're talking about because in the CAS filing, they were like, we don't know who the official is who took the stuff down, blah, blah, blah. The officials, for background, the officials are brevet judges from the host country who the host federation puts forward to do these secretarial duties. And I mean secretarial duties in the most precious form of the ancient Latin that comes from
the actual importance.
The importance
of secretaries.
Yes. Administrative, doing things correctly. Yes. And also, a secretary comes from the keeper of secrets, which is clearly what they have done here.
Jessica's done a lot of research on secretary.
Oh, I have a whole don't get me started because I don't know. I think that word is great and I love the word secretary. And I feel like administrative assistant took out so much gravitas from the role of a secretary. Secretary is a very important person. So anyway, the officials. Yeah, no, everyone knows who they are. Like they're on video. The French Federation knows, the Olympics knows, the volunteer system at the Olympics that had to keep track of them. Everybody knows who the officials are. They were assigned special duties. There's no reason. But would Donatella Sacchi recall that person's name at the CAS thing? No, they probably never spoke to each other. But
there should have been research done.
There should have been if they had had more than 24 hours to prepare for the hearing. Yes. There's no the biggest thing is like it's not really that person's fault that this happened. But I hear you. I would love a wanted poster. Not on them, but like a theoretical wanted poster. Oh my god. The person that made us the administrative error FIG established 1880 whatever. Could you also make a wanted poster for us? The official missing from the Omega table? Okay. Second question.
I'm also amused that scapulas are immodest, but 5,000 crystals and Leos that cost like $10,000 is modest somehow. Excellent point.
So this is referring to the rules about where your leotard can be cut in the front and the back.
Start of the rules of the leotard, which is that it must be modest. First comment. Must be modest.
Right. You can't show your scapulas, but if it doesn't cost $10,000, then...
Yeah. Modesty.
Can you imagine if there was a price cap on leotards? The outrage.
Oh. More than Jordan's bronze.
Oh, way more.
Next, I would like that henceforth and from now on, all verbal notifications of inquiry shall be done via blowhorn just for clarity and hilarity. Excellent point. Next Olympics, the coaches should be selected via a wipeout-style trials for the coaches, wherein they have to traverse 150 meters, cluttered with obstacles, moving people, falling pianos, chalk clouds, and paintballs to shout, "I have an inquiry" at the top of their lungs and get a mostly deaf-blind judge, possibly a cat, to acknowledge them. Whoever completes this the fastest is the coach. Thank you for attention to these matters. I agree. That's excellent.
I love this. Yes. The more dramatic the inquiries can be, the better. This is very important. Which is why, yes, I want you have to run up and hit a big red button like you do when you finish one of those ninja competitions and then a light goes on. It's very important. I mean, this is why I always mention, they don't even need the judges in baseball, which they call their judges umpires, that they're exactly the same thing. They don't even need them. They have a whole computer system, but they're there just to bump chests with people or whatever their little dance thing they do when they get upset. The upset dance they do in the baseball. Okay. We had talked, I think this is from around Olympic trials, and we were talking about the time where athletes can no longer take a certain kinds of painkillers and doping.
Also, talking about the live related to the live show during the Olympics.
Okay. Oh yeah, live show that we had during the Olympics. What a virtual live show. So this is Sarah, who is an MD.
I wanted to clarify a point about WADA and anti-doping from the live show. Diuretics are not performance-enhancing drugs, but because they make you pee more, they can mask the presence of performance-enhancing drugs by diluting and decreasing the concentration of PEDs to undetectable or allowable levels. The best way for anyone to tell if a medication is allowed is through Global DRO, aka the MediCheck app. Some prohibited substances can be allowed if a TUE, therapeutic use exemption, has been granted. It requires their TUE form to be submitted to the National Doping Agency, like USADA, and be approved. This is how Simone can continue her ADHD meds because she has a TUE with likely documented neuropsych testing physician's notes.
Pause. One thing I want to mention here is that Simone stated in an interview in August 2021 with, was this NBC? She said she also said she has not taken ADHD medication since 2017. So, for the record, as of August 16th, 2021, Simone said she doesn't take this anymore for many years. But again, this is her personal and private medical information, which she does not have to disclose to anyone except for WADA and USADA. And so we don't know what she does now.
There are officially no supplements approved by WADA, but athletes are generally safe if a supplement has been designated NSF safe for sport.
Also, Sarah, we read about your study, and this study is amazing. And please tell us when your study is out, because we would like to have you on to discuss this, because this is very important and relates to many things that we have talked about already in this episode. And I can't tell you what this study is about, you guys, because she doesn't want us to tell you about it yet, but it's amazing. And basically reinforces lots of things that we've said on the show for years. So I do want to say about the diuretics is that, diuretics not performance enhancing. Yeah, they're like basically people use them for quote unquote weight loss, which is basically just getting the water out of your body, which not having the correct hydration is a horrible thing and very bad, especially for athletes, and is extremely dangerous. So yeah, there's a very good reason that you're not allowed to use them. Next letter, 2016 highest scoring team, Ashton over Gabby.
Marissa says, I've been listening to the regular show since the Alicia Sacramone interview 8 years ago, and then became a Club Gym Nerd member only a few years ago. I start with this only to say, this is not a question from a normie who only watches gymnastics every 4 years. I'm a huge gym fan all year round and also a level 10 judge. I've heard Spencer mention many times over the years that the highest scoring team was taken to the 2016 Olympics. He has defended Gabby being taken many, many times, and will to my grave. I just heard him mention this again following 2024 trials. He also said he would pick a risky team as long as it was the highest scoring. The way I remember 2016, Ashton instead of Gabby was actually the highest scoring team. It would have been super risky with Madison Koshin having a weaker floor and only a full-on vault, plus the issue of only being able to put up 2 all-arounders in qualification. And I've been meaning to ask this question for a while now. Why does Spencer say the highest team was taken? Am I remembering wrong? I know he still has his 2016 spreadsheet, so please explain. Thank you. I do still have my 2016 spreadsheets. And yes, you are right. The Ashton and Koshin team was the highest scoring team. That team was never in a 1,000 billion years going to be taken. So it's kind of become shorthand that I'm like, Gabby was the highest scoring team because Gabby was part of the highest scoring, potentially realistically to be taken team. But I should clarify that every time, that it's actually the Ashton, Locklear, Madison Koshin team that was the highest scoring. And I would have taken it potentially because, hey, you only need 3 in the team final. Got Simone, Allie, Lori. That's fine. And then added a couple bars routines.
So I'm can you explain why that was an unrealistic team and was never going to really be considered?
As Marissa mentions, Koshin had a weaker floor score and only a full on vault and was kind of injured, really. Mm-hmm. Ashton was not full strength on those events either. And was not, Ashton's never going to do vault or floor. So it was kind of, that was such a risky team that they were never going to even consider it. And I think that was known before trials that was not going to be ever the team. Yeah. But it was the highest scoring team. Marissa is correct.
Yes, Marissa, hats off to you.
Nod to Marissa, who is correct. The Ashton and Koshin team would have had a much higher potential score. And so I'm on board. I think the defending Gabby is related to her score over Skinner or compared to Maggie Nichols, where Gabby is the highest scoring team.
Yep. Thoughts on Simone's documentary, and let me read these because there was many thoughts that Sandra had on this, and which were excellent and very funny. And I'm putting together our questions already to talk to Katie Walsh, the director of the Simone Biles Rising documentary on Netflix, which comes out October 23rd. Part 2. You can already watch part 1, and then you have the What Happened at the Olympics. October 25th. Sorry. Part of what your questions were, I've saved to talk to Katie about. But it's interesting. She has this one part about fan guilt. And she says, it's hard to watch the archival footage. Remember being so enthralled by it all. And now know some of what was really going on. Thank you, Gymcastic, for making it all about the athletes. Then, now, always. Also, fuck the Karolyis. Also, what Allie Raisman said, yes, I still have the shirt. Still available in the Gymcastic store. Also, this part was really interesting. Will you read this part about the haters? I didn't notice this.
Interesting how it was all men in the film criticizing her Tokyo decision and downplaying the mental aspects. I talk about this with my husband a lot, how women experience the world differently, often because of past trauma or even just bad situations that don't rise to that level but stick with you, and real constant fears about our physical safety. He's been enlightened. These dude bros on the talk shows, sports talk shows, need some lessons. Also, men in general play team sports. Your teammates are there for you in the ultimate goals. Expecting these idiot talk show bros to understand the solo nature of gymnastics and all that's involved is like expecting my dog to do calculus. They're not capable, LOL, short.
Obviously, women play lots of team sports as well. But yeah, I guess I'm so used to like the male voice just dominates sports discussion that I just ignore. I'm so like ignore anything they say that it didn't even occur to me that it was the women that were supporting her and a lot of men that were talking about how she quit during that time. Yeah. Okay. This article is really funny, and your feedback's really funny, and I enjoyed it very much.
I think there's also a situation where women who talk about sports on TV and in public have to be so careful of the reactions they're going to get, because it's going to be awful, that that creates an awareness of more things like people's mental health. And you have to be so careful about taking everything into account. Whereas the men on sports ball shows are just like, I'm going to have a controversial opinion because it's fun and that's what gives us ratings.
Mm-hmm. Yep. It's real easy to be a woman talking about sports.
Yeah.
Never criticized. Yeah.
No.
Also, speaking of criticism, someone was in one of the letters making a joke about why hasn't someone sold their story to USA Today. First of all, USA does not buy stories. It's People Magazine and Us Weekly you're thinking of. It's the tabloids that pay for stories. Anybody that pays for your story is not a real journalist. Christianity and gymnastics.
Hannah says, as a relatively new gym nerd who never participated in the sport, this question has been percolating for me this past year. It seems to me that in both college and American elite, there is a pronounced culture of demonstrative Christianity. Many members of the national team regularly reference scripture in their social media posts and even write verses on their bodies at competitions. Some college teams, looking at you, SEC, also seem to have an almost compulsory conservative Christian vibe. Is that A, something that's always been baked into the gymnastics world? If so, why? B, especially pronounced with the current crop of 15 to 25-year-olds? Or C, a thing that I'm just imagining? Thanks for such in-depth coverage of the sport. Safe but mildly entertaining course travels to you and through Paris. Bon voyage. See, we're getting real old now. But this is a very good question. Very interesting topic of discussion. I think is it something that's always been baked into the gymnastics world? If so, why? Is the most compelling yes answer. And it's because it's cheaper to build gyms in rural / less expensive coastal elite areas. And you have more religious the demographics tend to be more religious people going to your gym, learning gymnastics, getting really good at gymnastics. And then that filters into who are the top elites, who are the top college athletes.
And many
it is always very strange to me to read it because it's so not part of my life, where I'm like, oh, they're like religious. They're like really religious.
It's also, there are many gyms that were started in the basements of churches. That is a thing all over the country. And also, it's weird because I also grew up, I grew up on the East Coast, but I also grew up in a place where it was our school always had people of many different religions, and everybody went to school together, and everybody just did, if it was a certain holiday, we learned about their holiday and everybody did their thing and respected, and it was hands off. And it was, it was very weird for me to go to a place where it's I've been obviously to family things or invited to someone's house where it's oh, people pray before dinner, and I'm just oh yeah, you just sit quietly and or sometimes I say a prayer for whatever the most pressing political thing is, or that I want to happen in the world. But yeah, it is. I guess I always grew up in a way that's everyone gets along because you respect each other and leave each other alone to practice the way you want to practice, because you never assume everyone has the same beliefs or faith, whatever they are or not. And it is weird to go into situations where there's a prayer, and it's just a team thing and you just do it. And so someone or many people are left out, or can be potentially this is not me, actually really offends me to participate. This is not my belief system. This is not my religion. I'm in another religion. But yeah, it's a thing. It's definitely a thing. And that always brings up
to point C. It's not something you're just imagining. I also think it's not especially pronounced with the current crop of 15 to 25-year-olds. I think there's just more social media.
Yeah.
And so you get it more, but I don't think it's more so now than in past generations.
And I think the healthiest teams, people feel safe to express and be in their religion, whatever it is. And so do the people who aren't. And everyone that is equal. But then again, you might have, because of some coaches are you should never know where I stand politically or my religious or political beliefs. That should all be my I don't want to influence you in your life. You should live your life the way you want. But sometimes some coaches don't believe that.
Coaches have Twitter accounts.
Some coaches,
gross.
Some coaches are you should know everything about where I stand politically and everything about where my religious beliefs are. And then they attract those kind of athletes. So then you end up with a team that is more one way or the other. Explaining my name / trials. Oh yeah. Mirax was not related to Miralax, by the way, and gave a very funny story about that.
Since I'm writing anyway, I thought I'd share with everyone something I found interesting about the NBC broadcast of Olympic trials. We're all familiar with the tired narrative of how gymnastics is a young girl sport and everyone over 20 is old. Therefore, when I got home from trials and went to watch the broadcast, I was curious to see what the narrative would be this time, since everyone on the team is over 20 except for Hesley. I was pleasantly surprised to hear the narrative has completely changed. Instead of hearing how it was so weird to have so many women that were college age and older training for the team, we heard them talk about how young people like Hesley and Tiana are and how they have many years ahead of them in the sport. It was almost like they are now the anomalies, and people like Simone and Jade are considered to be more representative of the sport.
Yes! This is so amazing and wonderful, and I absolutely love this. And it's so great to hear how that has changed. I mean, like, they really are very conscientious at NBC now, and really, like, the behind-the-scenes team is led by women. And it's very different. So not perfect, but it's very different. Start by believing an innocent until proven guilty. Meredith wrote in and she had a personal story about like basically having a coach who she thought was like very tough and didn't agree with, but was like very helpful in her life. And she really thought this person helped her get to the next level. And then talking to athletes and friends later that were on the same team who were like, no, our coach was totally abusive. And just she talked about how hard it is to kind of decide what's right for you, what's right for other people, all that kind of stuff. And so her question is,
I know you've reported on abusive coaches in the past. Is there anything else you would say to fans who get upset when you don't report on every allegation or story on every coach out there? How do you keep your constant vigilance section fair and accurate?
Man, it is really hard. I think one of the mistakes that I made early on was not doing the full spectrum of research. And in like the journalistic rule is you always have to ask someone there are allegations against, what do you have to say about this? What is your take on this? Do you have any response to these allegations? Like, and in the beginning, I didn't do that. So that's something that I do now. And part of what's difficult about this is like, honestly, I got extremely burnt out, and therapy is expensive, about covering, so many years of covering the ex-doctor case. And so like constantly hearing more and more and more stories about similar situations was just like too much for me. I was just like, I can't, like got to the point where I couldn't even watch a TV show where someone started talking about something like that. I would just like start to get anxious and like panicky. And I was like, okay, I need to like take a break. So, I have not delved into a lot of those stories, even though I have talked to people. I have not covered them on the show because I had to like wait till I was ready and I had enough mental capacity to do the stories justice. So some things that we haven't covered are not because I don't think there's a real story or we don't think it's important. It's just because I have not had the ability to delve into those kind of stories yet. But there are things that I have been talking to people. There are things currently in the works, and some things it's like you talk to someone, and then something really unfair happens, like they're waiting for their court date, and then the person that's accused dies, or that then it's like, where's the justice? And there is justice in them telling their story, but it's also it's awful when people are allowed to avoid justice in those ways. The other part of it is how do you keep it fair? Like we do try to report on all the stories we catch that are like when people post something on social media. We try to report on them. Sometimes we miss them because honestly, social media is horrible and it's hard to ever be on social media. So sometimes we miss things, but then, thankfully I have a great community that tells us about stuff. So the constant vigilance is part of two parts. It's one, you have to put your oxygen mask off first. Or you have to put it off first.
Put it off.
You have to put
Get rid of it.
Oxygen.
That reminds me of that TV show, The Bones episode that MyKayla Maroney was on, where they were like, she was doing a double pike and I couldn't push her out of it. And we were like, push her out of it.
Oh my God. Push her in right under her head. You have to put your oxygen mask on first in order to help others. So you must self-care before you can help others. So part of the doing justice to stories is you have to have the capacity to give the full breadth of your skill to a story like this. And the other part is just making sure that when we report things, we make it clear, like, this is posted on social media by these athletes. This is a synopsis of what they've said. There is no response, or we've reached out to so-and-so and there is no response yet, or they haven't made a statement. But, you have to let people have their say. You have to reach out to the accused and also ask for a response, I guess. That's part of it. That was yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Where do I VPN?
Manoli says, longtime fan, longtime member, let's get to the question. Where do I tell my VPN to teleport me so I can watch coverage with Ali Hogben, assuming he's covering gymnastics during the Olympics? Oh, we missed this one. Maybe no longer relevant.
For the future.
I'm also worried about watching it all from where I am. Could you recommend somewhere that's definitely showing all qualifications and not just finals? Thank you so much, you guys. Sorry, Manoli.
Sorry.
We only got to it now. The Olympics are over.
VPN.
I use NordVPN.
I use TunnelBear.
Brazil often helpful as a place to connect from. That's one of my defaults is just to try Brazil, and it's usually works out. I just channel Rebecca Andrade. I'm like 1-800 Rebecca Andrade. Can I connect to your internet? And she's like, sure, it's fine.
I send my TunnelBear to Italy, Nigeria, Kenya, Spain sometimes, and sometimes I need it to be in England, and that's what works for me.
Yeah, sometimes it's country specific.
But now you can watch everything on the Olympic Channel, Olympics.com, OlympicChannel.com. You can watch everything. So I don't know if it's Ollie's commentary on there, but for the future. How many coaches on the floor?
Rose says, I hope you're doing well and managing stress as we head into this Olympic season. I was curious if you have any insight on how many coaches are allowed to be on the floor with the athletes at a given time. Does it vary across qualifications, team finals, and apparatus finals? If you know the number/rules, who do you predict will be on the floor with Team USA during qualifications and team finals?
The way it works is normally there's 2 coaches allowed, and normally it is the head coach, and then teams like the US will sub in their personal coaches, and basically they're only given 2 credentials, so you have to be pre-approved for who you're going to have, and then they basically swap a credential that allows them onto the floor so they can have people. That's why you'll see coaches, like, someone lands, they're like, are you good? And then they run to the corner, swap credentials, and the next coach runs out. And this is why you also see sometimes in team finals, someone will bring their teammate with them. They'll have their personal coach and then their teammate with them as the second coach to, like, prep their bars or,
Mm-hmm. Do you remember that time in the 2008 trials process when it was like, there has to be a woman coach? Yeah. And it was like, which there does, and there should be, but it could be Marta. Like, it wasn't a big deal at all, but they were like, NBC was making a big deal about, like, someone has to be selected to as a female coach. We couldn't possibly find a female gymnastics coach in this country because there are only men.
No.
Women can't spot, Jessica.
No, women can't spot. Everybody knows that. I got it so hard. This is why, there's a Momentum clinic where they teach you, like, to spot like a woman. This is one of the things you get out of that, which is like, yes, you can spot all the skills. Okay. After the administrative error, pommel dismount letter.
Yes, we did. Jessica skipping over Ryan give a name to the individual who sent an excellent logo of the FIG.
I skipped this because we talked about Ryan's logo before the administrative error logo, and we showed it on behind the scenes.
And we've showed it. I just wanted to we've talked about it many times, and I wanted to give Ryan a name.
Ryan's amazing. Ryan is who I'm asking for. What was the other thing I asked for? The other logo? I already forget what I said earlier. But pommel dismount. So this question is basically from Anthony. We sort of talked about earlier, but it's about with a skill. So we're talking about the Japanese.
I'll just read it. How about I just read it?
Go ahead.
Anthony says, you guys were talking about the Japanese team on pommel horse missing the dismount and then getting it back. This is in the Olympic trials controversies. or the Olympics controversies episode that we did before the Olympics to be like, there's going to be something weird that happens, and then something weird happened. That brings up a question I've never actually asked, but now have to know the answer to. If a skill is uncredited, is it not subject to execution score deductions? And if that's the case, then when the skill is awarded, even though the execution score is not to be inquired, shouldn't a review panel then rescore the routine with the difficulty added in but the execution deducted? If not, then that's a really easy way to game the system and exploit the code. Example, throw a Podkopaiva and get it uncredited. Inquire, get it credited, and get the full difficulty for the skill without the deduction on the execution score, so you increase your score to 1 to 3/10 with no decrease on the execution side. So as we talked about before, like at the Olympics, you say you do a switch ring on beam and your back foot is like, nope, not at head height. The D panel is going to say, we're crediting switch leap. The E panel doesn't know what the D panel is doing, even though they do. They're still going to take the deductions, like the 3/10 for the back foot not being high enough and anything else that's happening on that switch ring, like an insufficient arch for a 10th or something like that. So they're still taking the deductions on the skill that they see. So this strategy wouldn't really work, is what I'm saying, because they're still taking the deductions on what they see, and then the D panel is saying, no, it's uncredited.
We had a question from Jorans who wanted advice on how to become a career gymnastics coach. And my answer to this, Joran, is basically tell the gym that's what you want to do from the start. Like in your interview, say, I want to be a full-time gymnastics coach. And if you want to be an elite coach, that's different. But tell them, I want to be a full-time coach. What do I need to do? Can I work my way up here to be a full-time gymnastics coach? Also, if you want to be an elite coach, move to a gym with an existing elite program and tell them that. Like, I want to coach an elite. Can you train me? Is this a place that I can learn that? And can it have an opportunity to work with elites? And if you can't move, be willing to do the groundwork to start your own program. Like a lot of elite programs, it's like you have to pick out the kids that have freak strength, freak Hulk strength from the beginning, and train them in the body positions and make sure they have fun. Don't overtrain them. And because their progression is going to be so much faster than everybody else. And then the other option is if you really can travel, leave the country. There are lots of countries who want really knowledgeable, good coaches with experience. And yeah, there are jobs, but make sure wherever you go, you tell them this is what I want to do. This is my, and if you don't want to just coach elite, the other thing is like, make sure you do some credits on how to coach, a class for, people with disabilities, for people that have, like stimulation, issues. So it's a time when they can come in the gym and they can do things safely, but like the lights are down a little bit lower, there's no music on. It's like people with different abilities so that they can still enjoy gymnastics the way that they are able to. That's another really good way to add to your skills, that enhances the ability of the gym to serve its entire population and community. Fantasy Gym, go see meets and register.
This is from Fantasy Gymnastics Twink, which is an excellent name. Longtime listener, first time caller, big fan of the podcast. I'm sending Spencer all the healing vibes right now. There's a lot of Spencer-related talk so far. I mostly did Gymlytics last year, but I did participate a bit in the awesome platform you built this year. I feel really strongly that the budget should be as restrictive as possible.
Ooh, controversial.
It's controversial, but I like it. One of the challenges and benefits of fantasy gymnastics is having to do research about gymnastics and paying attention to and supporting gymnasts and teams you would otherwise not support. I think back to when Scott Bregman said that the budgets were too low and it needs to be easier so we could pick more well-known gymnasts. I love Scott, but the stricter the budgets are, the more likely the Scott Bregmans of this generation's NCAA women's gymnastics athletes would be chosen. Specialists and other utility athletes who all help carry their teams to new heights like historic regional and NCAA appearances and placements. Is that controversial to say? It's harder, yes, but it's so much more fun and so much more of a positively tumultuous wild ride when you're forced to choose between a gymnast from a lower ranked team or an untested freshman on a higher ranked team who might not even compete all 4 events. While the higher profile athletes are getting an incredible amount of media attention, which is great for the sport, that attention will only be sustained if we also do our part to elevate the rest of the gymnasts and the rest of the sport itself to that level worthy of the same attention. Lastly, I work in politics, and I'd be remiss if I did not remind folks to participate in their government by exercising their right to vote. While one person voting won't enact change itself, people using their collective power to elect more representative leaders is how we can make progress, like paying and protecting athletes. History has a tendency to repeat itself, so if you are able to, please check your voter registration and election dates, whether you live in the US or elsewhere, and participate in any political system anytime you can, like electing a new head of the FIG. Oops. Okay, bye.
Excellent letter. We do have a tool on gymcastic.com where you can register to vote or just follow that link and it'll take you to check your voter registration, because I think the deadlines have passed now mostly everywhere. Now because of like all these hurricanes, I'm like, oh, I have to vote early. Like I need to make sure I always voter by mail.
There might be a hurricane on election day.
Yes.
In Los Angeles, in Southern California.
So like there could be an earthquake.
There could be an earthquake.
Yeah, there won't be any weather, but there could be an earthquake. Well, there can be the minimum.
It might drizzle. And then no one knows how to drive, and you can't get to the polling place.
Don't even get me started on the driving in the rain here. It's terrifying. People do not know how to drive.
Budgets, fantasy gym budgets. I love a tight budget.
Mm-hmm. It's harder.
It's way harder.
This is not an easy one. This is like the hardest of the gym nerds. The chorus of the nerds thrive.
It restricts people. The counterpoint is it restricts people from picking their favorite gymnasts, like the famous ones, and then they don't necessarily want to play because they can't pick their faves.
Yeah. But elevating the unknowns is like one of the main points of fantasy. It's one of the things that's what makes you good at fantasy. Like you have to know how to construct a team, because not every team can just get all the stars. Olympics,
but there's always going to be like a high enough budget that you can
Yeah, you're always going to get one of the stars.
You can pick Jordan Childs if you want to.
Yeah, like you're going to be able to have one of those on the team. All right, last question, most important question.
Okay, whoa, here we go.
Why doesn't Simone dominate uneven bars? Spencer, explain.
Shell says, I have a question about uneven bars. I'm hoping you can help me understand what makes the best bars workers and why this isn't one of Simone's favorite events. I just want to preface this with, I know Simone's bars are some of the best in the world, and she's made a number of event finals with them. I've only ever done so much as a back hip circle, so would love some help understanding what makes a great bars worker. Thanks for the brilliant podcast. I would say one of the things that makes a great bars worker is wanting to do uneven bars and not being afraid of it, not being terrified of it. That helps a lot. Because Simone is a great bars worker. I think she just doesn't like it. And I think that's a lot of it.
Would you say that the reason that she isn't a 10-time world champion on bars is because although she has the capability of making the finals, she never has the difficulty?
Yeah.
If the most difficult people with the most difficult routines and cleanest can hit, she can't compete with them because she doesn't have that. She has that difficulty everywhere else, but not bars.
Right. Correct. She doesn't have it on bars, but I think the question is more like she has never developed that difficulty. And
that
theoretically, well, for competition.
Right.
Everyone trains other things. Yeah. Simone's developed a lot of difficulty in a lot of places that she's never competed. But for competition, never comfortable enough with that, never... what am I trying to say?
You're trying to say that if she wanted to, she could probably do this, but
if it worked for her, and I don't think it works.
Yeah, she doesn't need it.
Doing the learning like a Nabieva, I think Simone could do. I think she also would be like, no, I don't want to do that.
Yeah.
And so I think there has to be the like of the apparatus if you're in a healthy coaching environment, which I think Simone has been in her career, like I don't think there has been, I'm positive about Simone's coaching environment in her career. In a healthy coaching environment, the desire from the gymnast has to be there. It's not just forcing. And there are plenty of gyms that just force.
Mm-hmm.
And then you become great on bars and you resent it for the rest of your life.
But, you want to burn them.
Burn the bars. There are great bars workers who hate bars.
Yeah.
They're great. That's true on every event.
I think there is part of that. There could be a scenario where, Laurent forced, which I don't think he would do, but forced Simone to do all the skills she could possibly do on bars. And she hated it so much, she never came back. So I think the fact that she has decided that she will do the things that are fun enough for her to continue adding difficulty, and bars isn't one of them.
The ones she can tolerate on bars.
Yes, is the sign that the power balance is correct in that. And she. Yeah, I mean, I remember when she was really little, that very first classic, 2011 classic, when I saw her, and I was like, oh my God, this kid looks so amazing. Oh my God, look at her arm and her bars. I was like, oof. And she was so little. And a lot of coaches have talked about how the gymnast's hands, you can be amazing because the size of your body doesn't really matter on other events, except maybe vault. You need the power or the mass to push the actual springs down on the board for vault. But some gymnasts, their hands just aren't big enough, and they don't even fit into a grip that's big enough for the dowel to make up the deficit of their hand size to keep them on the bar. So it's terrifying because they're flying off all the time, because literally their little tiny hands aren't big enough to do the crazy ass skills on bars yet. So you have to just bring it down a notch on bars until they grow. And then when they're not flinging off all the time, they're not terrified.
Or they don't, like Simone.
Right. So thank you guys all so much for your questions. So if we didn't get to your question, it's because we read them and they just didn't fit, or we've already answered basically your question in one of our episodes. But we did read everything. And we do have the weirdest beam routines from Udi. We're going to do that on Friday because you put all kinds of links in here. And so Friday on Behind the Scenes, Udi, we will get to your amazing beam links, crazy hardest skill routine, because I'm obsessed with this. And thanks to everyone else who sent in their ideas. So until Friday for Behind the Scenes, where we do lots of this and discuss personal lives and things. Thank you to everyone who's
personal life.
Who sent in their oh my God, something crazy happened last Friday while Spencer was still on, while we were finishing up Behind the Scenes. Yeah. There was screaming. It was Spencer.
I heard a lot of screaming.
Witnessed the entire thing. I have to tell you guys about that on Friday. I'm still like, it's amazing. But thanks to everyone who sent in their castle ideas for me. So I appreciate that very much. Thank you for all of those. So if you want to find out what that's all about, we'll talk about it on Behind the Scenes on Friday at noon Pacific, which we do every Friday. And you can find all the links in the forum or on the show notes. Until then, take up on gay, split on rights. Don't push bars until your hands are big enough, or never. Thank you for listening. And we'll see you on Friday at noon Pacific for Behind the Scenes. Thanks for listening.